Yes, the Los Angeles Lakers were in action about 7, 8 hours ago, and it was an impressive win, a blowout win, in fact, over the Washington Wizards, where Anthony Davis started dropping 55 points against the Wizards, and there were chants of MVP right there in the arena as Davis is averaging 35.3 points per game over the course of his last 9 games. Shows you the form the man is in at this point in time. For the Lakers, it was a 130 to 119 points win over the Wizards, and that win takes them to 10 wins and 12 losses to the start of the season. While for the Washington Wizards, they are now 11 wins and 13 losses to the start of the season. Davis, as I said earlier, had 55 points, also garnered 17 rebounds. You had LeBron James as well starring with 29 points in that game, and the Lakers will take on the Cleveland Cavaliers next, and that will be on Tuesday with LeBron James returning home. Remember, he won a championship right there for the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016, where they became the first and the only team to recover from a 3-1 deficit in the NBA Finals and reach the championship, and that was against the Golden State Warriors. For the Wizards, you had Corey Kispert with 16 points, Kyle Kuzma, the former Lakers man, with 26 points as well, and they'll be taking on the Chicago Bulls next in their next match, and that will be on a Wednesday. Let's move away from the Lakers now and talk about the best team in the Western Conference, and that's the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns were in action this morning, and it was a blowout win against the worst record holder when it comes to the Western Conference, talking about the San Antonio Spurs. And for the Spurs, the record isn't looking good. It was a 133 to 95 points win for the Phoenix Suns, and that was their 7th win in 8 games. More importantly, it takes them to 16 wins and 7 losses to the start of the season. While for the San Antonio Spurs, the loss was their 11th in succession. It shows you the terrible form they're in. In fact, they are just 2 losses away from the worst skid in franchise history way back as in 1989. And this match also had their head coach Greg Popovich missing for the 2nd game running as a result of a medical procedure, which the franchise has deemed as a minor medical procedure. I'm sure the Spurs would want their head coach back as quickly as possible to put a stop to the rot, because it's not looking good for them at this point in time. There are 6 wins and 18 losses to the start of the season. As I said, they are the worst team when it comes to the Western Conference. The Phoenix Suns, 16 wins, 7 losses to the start of the season. DeAndre Ayton with 25 points, 10 rebounds. You had Devin Booker as well as Mikal Bridges scoring 20 points apiece. While for the Spurs, Keldon Johnson had 27 points. You had Devin Vassell with 14 points. Keita Batadub with 12 points as well. Now, Chris Paul didn't play for the Phoenix Suns, and that's because he's still battling with that right sore heel, and that's his 13th successive game is missed as a result of that injury. The Suns will be taking on the Dallas Mavericks later tonight, talking about Monday night. That's a cracker. You do not want to miss it. Talking about Luka Doncic up against Devin Booker. Meanwhile, for the San Antonio Spurs, they'll be taking on the Houston Rockets on Thursday, and that's a game where you expect that Greg Popovich, the head coach of the Spurs, will make a return to the dugout. Let's move away from there now and talk about the Boston Celtics. That's another team flying high at this point in time. The Boston Celtics were in action against the Brooklyn Nets, and that was a win for the Celtics. 103 to 92 points that ended, and surprisingly, it was Jaylen Brown who top scored for the Celtics with 34 points, had 10 boards as well in that game. You had Jason Tatum with 29 points and 11 rebounds for the Celtics. Meanwhile, for the Nets, Kevin Durant top scored with 31 points. Unfortunately, he had 8 turnovers to go with that, and that definitely affected the Nets, who couldn't also get enough support from Kyrie Irving, as was only able to contribute 18 points to the Nets in terms of scoring, or was also able to gather 8 birds. So it is the Nets who are 13 wins and 12 losses to the start of the season, while for the Boston Celtics, they are 19 wins and 5 losses to the start of the season. In fact, the Boston Celtics have the best record when it comes to the NBA this season. And for the Celtics, they'll be taking on the Toronto Raptors later on tonight. That's Monday night. While for the Brooklyn Nets, they'll be taking on the Charlotte Hornets later on Wednesday. Well, it's now time to talk about the All-Star Football Tournament that took place yesterday at the Campus Mini Stadium in Onikon, Lagos State. It was the 7th edition of the tournament, and it had several celebrities, ex-footballers, including musicians as well as comedians in action. Remember, this is a tournament that involves 4 teams. You have Manchester United, you have Arsenal, you have Manchester City, as well as Liverpool, all being represented by these various celebrities. And for this year's edition, the final was between Manchester United and Manchester City, and you had comedian Aquario score from the penalty spot right there as Manchester United ran out winners in the final, with Manchester City finishing as the runner-up. Talking about the highest goal scorers award for a tournament, that went to musician Sexy Still, who went home with 200,000 naira as a result of being the highest goal scorer of that competition. The MVP, which is the most valuable player award, went to Zoro, and he also went home with 120,000 plus 100,000 worth of airtime from one of Nigeria's leading telecommunications company. It was quite, entertaining right there, the atmosphere. You had so many celebrities in attendance, including actors such as Chinedu, also known as Aki of the famous Aki and Popo. Right, star-studded there. Even the celebrities and footballers had their own say when it comes to the World Cup itself. It was quite an eventful event. Let's see what the 8th edition of the show has to offer. Now let's talk quickly about the FIFA World Cup. Yes, and we'll have to just talk about Brazil straight up, because we're running out of time and we'll have to look at today's matches. Yes, England won convincingly against Senegal, but it's all about Brazil at this time, and it's about the return of Neymar to the starting 11, well, or to the side, it must be said. The question is he going to start today? That's a question no one knows except Coach Tite. But the good news for Brazil is their superstar talisman, Neymar, is returning after sustaining torn ligaments in his ankle. This is an injury that also sidelined him from, the Copa America victory in 2019. He also sustained the same injury last year in 2021. So let's hope that this injury won't derail Neymar's World Cup. They'll be taking on South Korea, and this is a matchup which you expect the Brazilians to win. They'll be going into this as the favorites. Remember, they've played 7 times, and Brazil has won 6 of those 7 matches. They've only lost once to their Asian counterparts. The last match between these sides was in June. That's June this year, and that's roughly about 5 months ago. And it wasn't a friendly game. Brazil ran out 5-1 winners convincingly. You expect today's match to also be the same. You look around from Richarlison to Vinicius Jr. to Neymar. You can go on and on about the array of stars the Brazilians have, especially offensively. That should just probably overwhelm the South Koreans. Let's wrap up the show now with the other round of 16 match we have today, and that's between Japan and Croatia. Now, this is a matchup that is quite tricky. On the face, you want to fancy the Croatians going through because they were the finalists from the last edition, but you can't rule out the Japanese. They've beaten Spain this tournament. They've also beaten Germany during the course of this tournament. So, they can definitely pull up another upset in terms of getting past Croatia to hit the quarterfinals of this fixture. No injury concerns from both sides, talking about Japan and Croatia that we know of. So it should be a full-fledged team for both coaches to work with in this encounter.